Every winter, American ranchers spend up to $50,000 just to keep their cattle fed. It is a losing game, where 80% of cattlemen need off-farm jobs to survive. But in the 1700s, livestock thrived in thickets of river cane, a plant that packed more protein than alfalfa, stayed green all year, and reseeded itself forever, with no hay, no diesel, and no fertilizer. So why did a native forever feed disappear from millions of acres, and whose interests kept it buried? The answer starts by exposing the numbers cattlemen face today. A rancher's ledger rarely lies. The numbers line up in neat columns, but the story they tell is anything but tidy. On one side, the annual cost of hay, often $50,000 or more for a herd of 200 cattle through a single winter. That figure alone can swallow up a year's profits before spring grass even returns. But hay is just the beginning. Every bale comes with a hidden stack of receipts: diesel for tractors, twine for baling, fertilizer to coax one more cutting from tired fields. Extension service cost sheets break it out in black and white. Fertilizer now accounts for up to 40% of total operating expenses in a typical cow-calf operation. Diesel and baling run another 20 to 30%. What remains? Insurance, seed, repairs, barely registers, but it all adds up. The price of beef, meanwhile, moves like a flag in the wind. In recent years, a rancher might get $1.50 to $2.50 a pound live weight at the sale barn. But by the time the last check clears, the profit per animal can vanish entirely. USDA census data paints a stark picture. Nearly 80% of American cattle producers now work off the farm to keep their operations afloat. For most, the cattle business is really a grass farming operation that bleeds money on every input. Equipment sits idle for months, yet payments roll in every month. The cost of keeping a tractor running through one winter, fuel, maintenance, and repairs, can rival the price of a used pickup. Extension agents and agricultural economists have run the numbers 1,000 ways. Their spreadsheets tell the same story. The only reliable path to profit is to cut costs, not chase higher beef prices. A single bad winter, one ice storm, or a late freeze can double the hay bill overnight. The margins are so thin, even the best-run ranches can lose money for years on end. In the modern hay trap, the system is designed so that every animal is an engine for someone else's profit: the fertilizer dealer, the fuel supplier, the equipment salesman. The rancher is left with the risk and the hope that next year will be better. It's a cycle that's hard to break. The more you spend on inputs, the more you need to produce just to stay even. And yet, the ledger's cold arithmetic points to a single conclusion. The only way to win is to stop playing by these rules. Somewhere, there must be a plant that grows without the constant drip of diesel and dollars, a forage that cheats the system, feeding cattle through winter without a single bale hauled or a check written. The search for that plant is not just about saving money, it is about survival. The answer to the hay trap once shaped the very land itself. In 1750, when surveyors mapped Kentucky for the first time, they did not call it the Bluegrass State. They called it the Land of Cane. The earliest maps, drawn in careful ink, show cane breaks, vast uninterrupted thickets of tall green stalks stretching for miles along every river and creek. These were not patches or odd corners. Cane breaks covered millions of acres. Some estimates say as much as a quarter of the state. Early travelers wrote of riding on horseback for days through walls of cane so thick a man could barely swing an axe. It was the dominant feature of the landscape, a living boundary marker for the frontier. This plant was not some exotic import. Its name is Arundinaria gigantea, river cane, the only native bamboo in North America. It belongs to the grass family, but stands apart from the pastures and hayfields familiar to modern ranchers. Where bluegrass and fescue hug the earth, river cane rises in dense columns, reaching heights of 20 feet or more. Its leaves stay green through winter, unfazed by frost or snow. The canebrakes created their own climate, trapping warmth and moisture, sheltering wildlife from the worst of the cold. Bison, elk, and deer gathered in these thickets when prairie grass went brown, feeding on the tender shoots and leaves. Early settlers noticed cattle would push into the cane even when other forage was available, drawn by something the hayfields could not offer. Scientists have measured what the animals already knew. Forage tests from university labs show river cane's crude protein levels range from 14 to 18%, matching or even beating good alfalfa. In the depths of winter, when most grasses turn brittle and lose their nutrition, cane keeps its value. It is a perennial engine, photosynthesizing when other plants sleep, turning sunlight into protein and energy that carries herds through the lean months. No fertilizer required, no diesel burned. The plant's roots reach deep for water and nutrients, making it thrive in poor soils where crops would fail. The cane breaks were more than cattle feed. They shaped the soil itself. Beneath the towering stalks, centuries of fallen leaves and decaying roots built up a layer of rich, black earth. Settlers quickly learned that wherever cane grew thick, the ground was good for planting. John Filson's 1784 map of Kentucky marks the cane breaks as prime land, so valuable that entire towns were founded at their edges. The cane's presence was a promise. Here the land would yield, but that same promise would eventually spell its undoing. For a time, though, river cane stood as proof that a plant could feed animals, build soil, and require almost nothing in return. It was a native solution, hiding in plain sight. The ledgers and receipts of today's ranchers never mention it, but the old maps do. The land of cane is not a myth. It is a forgotten chapter written in green across the heart of the continent. The question is not whether such a plant ever existed. The question is why, with all its promise, it disappeared from the story. Cattle step into the cane as winter settles over the valley. The air is sharp. The fields outside lie brown and brittle. But inside the thicket, the world is green and alive. River cane towers overhead, a living canopy 20 feet high, its leaves thick enough to catch the wind and quiet the snow. The ground beneath is sheltered, dry, and warmer than the open pasture. In the worst months, when hay barns empty and diesel tanks run dry, the cane thicket becomes more than a food source. It is a refuge. Ranchers from the 1930s left field notes describing cows and calves bedding down in the heart of the canebrake, chewing on leafy stems while storms raged outside. The cattle graze upward, stripping leaves from the stalks, moving deeper as they eat. Each bite is high in protein, even in December, when most forage has lost its value. The animals are not just surviving, they are gaining weight. Their coats glossy through the coldest stretch of the year. No machinery is needed here. There are no engines rumbling before dawn, no tractors struggling through snowdrifts to deliver round bales. Labor shrinks to the basics. Check the fence, count the herd, open a gate. The cane does the rest. Its evergreen growth means the thicket stays green long after the last frost. Photosynthesis runs quietly through the winter, feeding the roots, fueling new shoots, keeping the leaves nutritious. Cows feed themselves, sheltered from wind and ice by walls of living forage. The thicket acts as a barn, a windbreak, and a pantry all at once. In cold snaps, the difference is obvious. Where hay-fed cattle huddle in open lots, burning calories to stay warm, those in cane thickets are protected by a natural barrier. The temperature inside the stand can be several degrees higher than outside, and the wind loses its bite before it ever reaches the herd. The cane's density traps heat, reduces stress, and keeps the animals comfortable enough to keep eating and growing. Ranchers who have watched this firsthand describe it as a living barn, a structure that never needs repairs and never sends a bill. Old photographs from the Tennessee Valley Authority archives show herds standing deep in green cane, snow piled high outside the thicket. The cows are calm, heads down, chewing steadily. There are no hay wagons in sight, no piles of spent twine or diesel drums, just animals and plants locked in a partnership that asks for little and gives back plenty. The labor and fuel savings are not theoretical. In these fields, the work and expense of winter feeding nearly disappear. The cane stands ready, year after year, offering shelter and food when nothing else will grow. The promise is simple: let the cattle feed themselves and let the plant do the heavy lifting. Numbers from forage labs tell a story the eye can't see. In controlled trials at the University of Kentucky, mature river cane stands have produced more than 4 tons of dry matter per acre each year, even on poor soils with no added fertilizer. That figure doubles or even triples the output of tall fescue, America's most common pasture grass, which averages just 2 to 3 tons per acre in the same conditions. On paper, the difference is dramatic. In the field, it's even more striking. The secret lies in the way river cane grows. Where fescue and bluegrass spread across the ground in a flat mat, cane rises in dense vertical columns, each stalk reaching 12 to 20 feet. That height is not just for show. It means every square yard of ground supports layer upon layer of edible leaves and shoots. While a typical pasture offers a single grazing surface, a mature canebrake turns the field into a living skyscraper of forage. Cattle are not limited to nibbling the top of a short sward. They graze up and down, stripping leaves from the walls around them, working through a 3-dimensional buffet that keeps renewing itself from below. Lab tests confirm the yields. At peak growth, a single acre of river cane can yield more than 8,000 pounds of dry, nutritious forage in a season, sometimes over 10,000 pounds in the best bottomland. That is not just a one-time flush. Dense stands can maintain these yields for decades, provided they are managed for regrowth and not grazed to the ground. By comparison, even the most productive fescue fields struggle to break 6,000 pounds per acre without heavy fertilization and perfect weather. Most years, they do half that. The vertical structure of cane changes the math entirely. Forage specialists call it biomass density. Instead of farming a flat acre, you are harvesting a stacked volume. Every foot of height adds more food. This is why early accounts from the 18th and 19th centuries describe horses and cattle disappearing into thickets, and why bison could winter in canebrakes without losing weight. The plant's architecture lets it outproduce any grass that hugs the ground. It is not just about quantity. The crude protein in river cane routinely tests at 14 to 18%, matching good alfalfa and far exceeding most winter grasses. That means every ton of cane delivers more nutrition per bite, especially when cold weather strips value from other forages. Ranchers who have tried it report that cattle gain steadily through the lean months, with no need for grain or protein tubs. Every acre becomes a self-sustaining feedlot. These numbers are not theoretical. Forage lab bar charts, extension bulletins, and pilot projects all point to the same conclusion. River cane can yield 2 to 3 times more usable forage per acre than the best managed fescue, and it does so with almost no external inputs. The promise is clear in the data, but if the math is this strong, the question becomes unavoidable. Why did these thickets vanish from the landscape? Why are they not the backbone of every cattle operation today? Settlers arriving in the Ohio and Mississippi valleys found a landscape shaped by canebrakes, but their priorities lay elsewhere. The first waves of migration brought cattle, hogs, and horses that roamed unfenced. Free-range livestock pressed into the cane thickets, rooting, trampling, and grazing until the dense stands thinned and vanished. By the 1820s, land office records in Kentucky and Tennessee show a steady march of conversion. Tens of thousands of acres each year cleared for row crops. The black soil beneath the cane, built up over centuries by roots and leaf litter, was the prize. Cotton and corn promised quick returns. The plow became the tool of progress, turning perennial thickets into fields of annual grain. Eyewitnesses left blunt accounts. John James Audubon, traveling through Kentucky in the early 1800s, described canebrakes as impenetrable walls that fell quickly to axes and fire. By the middle of the century, newspapers like the Louisville Journal reported entire counties stripped of cane, the land broken and planted to feed a growing nation. Hogs, especially, did their share of damage, rooting up rhizomes and leaving nothing but stumps where green forests once stood. The tragedy played out in slow motion. As each patch of cane disappeared, the deep, spongy soil was exposed to wind and rain. Without the dense root net to hold it, erosion set in, washing away the fertility that drew settlers in the first place. Land agents and agricultural boosters saw the transformation as progress. The canebrake was labeled a weed, an obstacle to be removed. Extension bulletins from the 1840s and 1850s urged farmers to clear waste canebrakes for productive use. By 1900, less than 2% of the original cane remained in Kentucky and neighboring states. The vast green thickets that once fed bison and cattle year-round were gone, replaced by checkerboards of corn, cotton, and bare winter fields. The loss was not just botanical, it was economic and ecological, a severing of the link between plant, animal, and soil. What began as a practical decision, driven by the promise of quick cash and the demands of a new agricultural economy, left behind a landscape stripped of its original resilience. The canebrake, once a living engine of fertility, became a memory, its benefits forgotten as the plow moved west. What lay beneath those vanished thickets would become the next puzzle, the secrets hidden in the roots and the soil they left behind. Beneath every canebrake, an underground world is at work. River cane owes its resilience not just to what grows above the ground, but to the dense network of roots and rhizomes weaving through the soil below. These rhizomes form an interlocking mat, often stretching 1 to 2 feet deep, binding the earth together in a living web. Where most pasture grasses send down scattered roots, cane's underground lattice is so tight it acts as natural rebar, holding riverbanks in place through flood and drought alike. Soil scientists studying restored canebrakes measure the difference in inches of topsoil. In fields where cane has returned, the ground gains 2 to 4 inches of rich, dark earth every decade, built up from layers of decaying roots and fallen leaves. This process does not just slow erosion, it stops it cold. Rainwater that would strip bare fields instead filters down through the rhizome mat, losing its load of silt and fertilizer runoff along the way. Water that leaves a canebrake runs clearer, carrying fewer pollutants into streams and rivers. The rhizome net does more than protect the land. It acts as a carbon sink, drawing down 5 to 10 tons of carbon dioxide per acre each year, outpacing even many young forests. Every season, new shoots and leaves capture sunlight, turning it into organic matter that sinks into the soil as roots expand. Over time, this steady accumulation transforms thin ground into deep, spongy black earth, the kind that fueled the old stories about Kentucky's black gold. This root architecture is not just a curiosity for botanists. For ranchers and land managers, it is a kind of living infrastructure. Where canebrakes stand, there is less need for expensive erosion control projects, fewer lost acres to gully formation, and a built-in filter that keeps nutrients where they belong. In the Mississippi and Ohio valleys, restoration crews have watched gullied fields stabilize in a single season after planting cane, roots locking the soil in place before winter rains can carry it away. The value of river cane goes well beyond forage. Its rhizome mat turns fragile ground into a fortress, filters water, and stores carbon at a rate few other plants can match. Yet for all this hidden work beneath the surface, the question lingers. If the benefits are so clear, what stands in the way of bringing canebrakes back to the landscape? Confusion surrounds river cane before a single shoot even breaks the surface. In many states, the word bamboo triggers alarm bells, landowners worry about invasiveness, and neighbors picture walls of golden stalks swallowing fences and gardens. But the plant at the center of this story, Arundinaria gigantea, is not the Asian import that runs wild through southern suburbs. Golden bamboo, Philostachys aurea, appears on most state invasive species lists. River cane, by contrast, is native to North America and has been here for millennia. Extension agents in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Mississippi keep careful records. Not a single state fines or restricts planting native cane. The legal confusion is real, but it is rooted in misidentification, not in any ban. Yet finding river cane to plant is another matter. Nursery surveys tell the story. While golden bamboo is sold by the truckload, native cane is almost invisible in the commercial trade. A handful of specialty growers like Roundstone Native Seed in Kentucky offer small bundles for restoration, but supplies vanish quickly each spring. University restoration crews file paperwork each year to source rhizomes from wild stands, often waiting months for enough stock to fill a single acre. The slow pace is not from regulation, it is from scarcity. Unlike patented crops, river cane cannot be owned or licensed. There is no profit for big seed companies in a wild plant that anyone can dig and divide. Without a patent or a trademark, there are no royalties, no exclusive rights, and no marketing push. The only real incentive to propagate cane comes from conservation grants or university research. Extension Service documents outline the path for anyone determined to restore a cane brake. Confirm the species, avoid Asian bamboos, check local nursery lists, and be ready for paperwork if working with public lands. The rules are clear. River cane is legal, but rare. The real barrier is not the law, it is the lack of supply and the absence of commercial muscle. For those willing to wait, the next challenge is patience. Cane does not fill a field overnight. The timeline for a stand to reach maturity stretches far beyond a single growing season. Year 1 in a new cane field does not look like much. Shoots barely reach your knee. Most of the work happens below the surface, as roots spread quietly through the soil, setting the foundation for everything to come. Extension charts call this the sleep phase. Nothing above ground hints at the scale of what is building out of sight. There is no grazing yet, just patience and the hope that every rhizome is taking hold. By year 2, the field starts to change. Shoots pop up in new places, tracing long lines as the underground network expands. This is the creep, a slow, steady march outward. The stand thickens, but the plants still look more like a scattered patch than a true thicket. University propagation studies show the average spread jumps from a few feet to over 10 feet in this stage, but the real payoff is still out of reach. Ranchers who have tried it compare these early years to waiting for an orchard. You invest time up front, knowing the return comes later. Everything shifts in year 3. The cane leaps skyward, doubling or tripling in height. Dense columns rise up where bare ground stood before. Forage specialists measure the difference. In a single growing season, yield can jump from less than a ton per acre to over 4 tons per acre, with the tallest stalks pushing 15 feet. By year 5, a mature stand is ready for its first real grazing. Extension Service data puts the full establishment timeline at 5 years, longer in dry or compacted soils and shorter with careful management. But once the stand fills in, the math changes completely. The cane thicket is self-renewing, with a lifespan that can stretch a century or more. Charts from pilot projects in Kentucky and Tennessee map out the curve, slow, then sudden, then steady for decades. The upfront wait is the price of breaking free from the cycle of annual planting and feeding. Ranchers who stick with it trade 5 years of patience for a feed source that outlasts a generation. The promise is not instant, but permanent, a living system that, once established, needs almost nothing to keep going. And with the stand mature, the next surprise comes from inside the herd itself. Bloat is a silent killer on winter pastures. Every rancher knows the risk. One cow found dead, her left side swollen tight after a night grazing lush clover or alfalfa. The cause is microscopic, frothy bloat. Rapid fermentation in the rumen traps gas in a foam the animal can't expel. It can strike a whole herd after a heavy dew, and no warning sign is obvious until it's too late. Extension bulletins list the usual suspects: high-protein legumes, low fiber, and a rumen that can't keep up. The solution, they say, is to mix in more roughage, but every bale of hay or straw is another line on the expense sheet. River cane rewrites the rulebook. Forage lab certificates show crude protein levels that rival the best alfalfa, 14 to 18%, but the plant structure is different. Cane leaves and stems pack a high level of neutral detergent fiber, the kind that slows fermentation and keeps the rumen working at a steady pace. The result is a diet that delivers protein without the risk. In trial herds, not a single case of bloat has been recorded after months on cane alone. The fiber acts like a natural regulator, letting gas escape with every chew and burp. Cattle graze through the winter, gaining weight with no need for anti-bloat blocks or emergency calls to the vet. On the back of every forage test, there is a slip of paper, dry matter, protein, fiber, all within the safe zone for ruminants. The numbers are reassuring, but the real proof is in the daily health of the herd. No swollen sides, no sudden deaths, just steady growth and calm chewing in the heart of the canebrake. It is a system that works with the animal's biology, not against it. The safety is baked into the plant itself, a benefit that often goes unnoticed until disaster strikes somewhere else. Behind the scenes, another mystery is at work. The roots of river cane do more than anchor the plant. They interact with the soil in ways that still puzzle researchers, hinting at a deeper connection between plant, animal, and land. A microscope slide reveals a tangle of cane roots, each strand coated with a living film of bacteria. In university labs, microbiologists probe these roots for signs of a hidden partnership, searching for the genetic fingerprints of diazotrophs, the bacteria that convert air into plant-ready nitrogen. DNA surveys confirm the presence of the NIFH gene, a marker for nitrogen fixers, inside the rhizome's tangled mass. But the numbers tell a cautious story. Early field trials show these endophytes may contribute some nitrogen, perhaps 20 to 50 kilograms per hectare each year, but not enough to fully replace synthetic fertilizer. The nitrogen-15 tracer test remains unfinished business. Without it, the promise of a truly self-fertilizing cane remains a hypothesis, not a guarantee. Still, the roots change the soil in ways that are hard to ignore. Restoration plots show that after 5 years, topsoil deepens, organic matter rises, and the land holds more water. Ranchers who plant cane notice they buy less fertilizer each season. But the real story is what happened after World War II, when the economics of farming shifted overnight. Wartime factories, once devoted to explosives, now churned out ammonium nitrate by the trainload. The federal government, flush with surplus, subsidized the spread of synthetic nitrogen across millions of acres. Extension bulletins from the late 1940s urged farmers to plow up perennials and plant annuals, corn, cotton, and wheat, fed by cheap, reliable fertilizer. Cane, with its slow growth and unpatented roots, could not compete with the speed and scale of the new system. There is no smoking gun, no memo naming river cane as a target. But policy records and fertilizer sales charts from the era tell the story in parallel lines. As ammonium nitrate use soared, perennial forages faded from the landscape. The cane's quiet ability to recycle nutrients and build soil was drowned out by the promise of instant yield. In the end, it was not a conspiracy that pushed cane aside. It was a market built on speed, inputs, and the relentless drive for more. The plant that once made the soil too rich for the fertilizer business became a casualty of a new kind of agriculture. Today, nearly 90% of U.S. cattle feed relies on imported high-input crops, while native river cane remains nearly forgotten. As droughts worsen and input costs soar, the real barrier is not technology, it is patience, it is policy, and it is who profits from dependence. The question is no longer what is possible, but whether we will let a free, self-renewing solution take root again. Sometimes the future grows quietly at the edge of the field. What would you risk to let it return?